Our reading this morning comes from Jan Richardson. This is Rend Your Heart for Ash Wednesday. Even now, says the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping, and with mourning. Rend your hearts and not your clothing. That is from Joel chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. To receive this blessing, all you have to do is let your heart break. Let it crack open. Let it fall apart so you can see inside its secret chambers, the hidden spaces where you have hesitated to go. Your entire life is here, inscribed whole upon your heart's walls. Every path taken or left behind, every face you turned toward or turned away, every word spoken in love or in rage, every line of your life you would prefer to leave in shadow, every story that shimmers with treasures known and those you have yet to find. It could take you days to wander these rooms, 40 at least. And so let this be a season for wandering, for trusting the breaking, for tracing the rupture that will return you to the one who waits, who watches, who works within the rending to make your heart whole. There is a strength that comes with loving and knowing you will die, and you can see it in the eyes of those who remember and still refuse to love any less than with their whole selves, is the print from Story People. As someone who was raised unchurched and as a non-theist, but still obviously surrounded by Christian thoughts, practices, and culture, I decided in seminary to explore some of the liturgical seasons, like Lent and Advent. At first glance, and for sure in some traditions, Lent has the feel of impending death. The 40 days of the season of Lent are meant to be reminiscent of Jesus' 40 days in the desert or wilderness when he was tempted by Satan and before entering his public ministry. So the 40 days of Lent are meant to inspire individuals to undergo deep, vulnerable changes and challenges prior to Jesus' death on the cross and the subsequent celebration of the resurrection on Easter. Death is hard. We lose everything we love as we're dying. While for many this can be a peaceful, slow transition to whatever it is that comes next, for many others it is of the greatest hardship. Dying often quickly helps us know what is most important to us, and so we focus our time remaining with those things and people. And this changes us too, both dying and survivors. As the Sephardic Jewish poet, physician, and philosopher Judah Halevi wrote almost a millennium ago, "'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, to hope, to dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched." But that's not Lent's whole intent. While many experience Lent as a time of giving up, especially as children, we've given up chocolate and meat as kids, right? I didn't, but I know many people did. So we're giving up these things that we love the most. It's more than that. Lent is a time of intentionally making space. One way we can do this can be to give something up, something that we really love or something that is taking up a lot of space mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually in our lives. Another perspective is that we are actually just shifting our priorities. Lent is about focusing our energy on our spiritual relationships and deepening our senses of wonder and faith. Kate Bowler's beautiful memoir, No Cure for Being Human, for example, recounts her story of having been diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. She underwent surgery and chemo and immunotherapy and somehow went into remission. But her life was changed by the experience of dying. She writes, "And then I looked closely at my life. I realized I'm not just learning to seize the day. In my finite life, the mundane has begun to sparkle. The things I love, the things I should love, become clearer, brighter." In an excerpt from Ash Wednesday and Lent, Beginning Again Always by Benedictine sister Joan Chittister, she writes, "Lent is a call to weep for what we could have been and are not. Lent is the grace to grieve for what we should have done and did not. Lent is the opportunity to change what we ought to change and have not. Lent is not about penance. Lent is about becoming, doing, and changing whatever it is that is blocking the fullness of life in us right now. Lent is a summons to live anew." She continues, "Lent is the time to let life in again, to rebuild the world we've allowed to go sterile, to fast and weep and mourn for the goods we've foregone. If our own lives are not meant to die from lack of nourishment, we must sacrifice the pride or the sloth or the listlessness that blocks us from beginning again." For a variety of reasons, I have been thinking a lot about grieving. I know we liberal people have been angry, and we should be. Maybe as individuals, you've done some of your own grieving around the state of the country or whatever things you might be holding right now, but we haven't done it together, and I feel its presence in my life and in the lives of so many of my friends, family, and colleagues. I recognize that even when it's not the primary feeling or emotion that's being expressed by someone, as a chaplain and minister, I've spent a lot of time with people who are grieving. People in hospitals don't call a chaplain because they've had a good day. They call because they're dying, or someone they love died or is dying, or they're struggling with addiction or mental health issues, or got a hard or complicated diagnosis that will change their life, or they need surgery and they're scared, or any number of reasons. And we don't just grieve death of anyone we love, including pets and illness, of the many complications that can come with these. We grieve for the jobs we've lost, or the one that we really wanted and didn't get. Estrangement from family or friends, including due to the polarization of life in America. Divorce and separation, changes in relationships, a move and the many changes that can come with that. Loss of community or communities, miscarriage, imprisonment, retirement, children leaving home, parents coming to live with us, difficulties in relationships, changes in eating habits, how we celebrate holidays, the life we used to have before something, or a future that never happened, or dreams that never came to be, or a past that we never had. We also grieve for the way that the world hurts from the damage humans cause, the extinctions of species, changes in their habitats, the climate crisis, and other related environmental losses. As a society, we have never grieved the pandemic and all its consequences. Many of us now are also grieving the losses of our personal rights and freedoms and safety. This is when and why we need to be together, to acknowledge not just the vulnerability of all our lives, but the tenderness of it and what it means to be alive in this place, in this time. We need to be reminded that we are not ever alone in this. The purpose of religious communities is to celebrate, grieve, call for justice, and honor and mark every part of human life publicly. to remind ourselves that we are connected with others and that we are wired to be together. As our beloved 20th century Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams said, "Church is a place where you get to practice what it means to be human." It's possible at this point in our society, it is the only public place we get to do that. Grief is an integral part of healing. It is transforming, metabolizing sorrow and anger into contentment, peace, and even joy. So I want us to do a grief ritual, inviting us to surrender what we might be holding back or what might be holding us back. What is something that you're grieving? Or maybe it doesn't feel like grieving, but something that you're mad about or fearful of. Everyone in the building should have 2 index cards. If you don't, would you raise your hand, and Blessed Al will be around to bring them to you. And if you're on Zoom, you can write down on a scrap of paper, you can type into the chat, or you are welcome to email me at lakecountyrev@gmail.com. In the spirit of Lent, on one index card, I want you to write what you are grieving or what you want to let go of this season. I don't mean recent major deaths or things that you're meant to be holding, but maybe it's watching the news all the time, or the feeling of betrayal or hurt that so many people didn't vote and the ones who did have given us this horrible administration, or whatever else it is that it's time to let go of. Maybe you're still grieving the pandemic. Just write that down on one. On the other, I want you to write down what you want to allow more of into your life. What do you plan to make space for by letting go of the other thing? Maybe it's more time for this community or another that you love, or your family, or spiritual practice, or something else. So the questions: what are you letting go of, and what are you letting in? How would you like your life to be transformed in this season? I'm going to give you a minute or two to answer these questions, and then I'm going to invite you up, and you can leave your intentions in the baskets up here, marked for letting go and letting in. On one, what are you letting go of? And on the other, what do you want to let in? All right, and when you are ready, you are welcome to come forward and leave your index cards in the baskets. And soon the choir will sing for us as well. Thank you all for your patience in the awkwardness. Thank you, UU singers. It's good to have you back. So of the things that you have written down, I do encourage you, if you are willing and interested in sharing with each other during the potluck or another time, especially if you would like an accountability partner for this season. Lent helps us connect deeply with our humanity. It's a way for us to grieve things we hadn't thought to grieve before. Maybe we were too busy or surviving, or we hadn't grown enough to see the ways that we were harmed or caused harm. Lent invites us to do that inward searching and notice what it brings up. Lent invites us to hold those things, to love them, and to let them go or let them shape us as they will. Lent reminds us that although the journey we take is ours alone, we journey better with others. Lent is part of a ritual and comes every year, giving us new opportunities to learn and see what comes up. And when we are in it, it's helpful to remember both that it is for a short time, about 6 weeks, but also that we cannot be expecting a particular outcome. That's the mystery of it and why practicing can bring us so much. We don't know. We have to let go of expectations of what will be on the other side and just be in it. And when we can do this, we ourselves can appreciate more fully the joy and awe of a life resurrected, not someone else's, but our own. And when we practice in community, we can all celebrate this new life, these new awarenesses we've had together. Lent brings us back to the core of who we are, to our beliefs and values. The 6 weeks can seem like a long time, but part of its beauty is that it gives us the opportunity to not only realize things, but then to practice acting on them. And this is where the transformative power of Lent is, in that practicing. With humility, honesty, and integrity, we can focus our energy on what's most important. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return, is a blessing and prayer offered to each person who receives the imposition of ashes on Ash Wednesday. These words remind us of our mortality, the limits of a human life. The ashes are about the potentials and the bareness of the human life. If we were stripped of all worldly things, as Sister Chittister says, all the things that hold us back, that keep us from being open, prevent us from connecting among and between, if all of that is taken away, then who would we be? Find that person. Find who love is calling you to be in this season. If you would please rise and join me in our closing hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath.